One of the great questions, of course, if the eemian mystery is as Paul says it is, why haven't I heard about it before? Why hasn't science told me all about it? I've never even heard a thing about it up until now. Well, that's a great question. And I want to talk for a moment about evidence. When we talk about evidence, we want to turn to science, of course. And in science, there are two basic means of gathering evidence. So let's start with the first. The first one, we uncover an ancient bone. We uncover a skeleton of a dinosaur or an ancient man. Based on that evidence, we come up with a theory, a hypothesis. I think, based on the carbon dating, the place that it was found, the evidence, etc., a story emerges. A supposition, but it's a story, a hypothesis. This is what I think happened. And then, over the years, hardworking, dedicated researchers take that story and try and find more evidence that either supports it or refutes it. The other side of that coin, a hypothesis or a story, is thought up by somebody that, without any evidence whatsoever, kind of explains in their head why something happens. For example, why does it look like the sun crosses over the sky? It would make sense that we are sitting still and these heavenly bodies are moving. And at one point, some very bright fellow thought, based on some other evidence, I'll bet that may not be true. Maybe it is we that are moving in a circle around these. And he sets out, or she sets out, to prove it. Okay, so those are our two kinds of evidence. Now, we have plenty of evidence that the eemians, Homo sapiens, our 120,000-year-old ancestors, were real. We know they were real. We've got plenty of fossil evidence to see that. What we don't have, if they had a modern society, we don't have machines that they would have made. We don't have their dwellings. We don't have any evidence whatsoever that a modern society existed, even though a lot of evidence that I have presented suggests that that may very well have been the case. Okay, so we're going to start with that kind of hypothesis. Now, once you have that, then what's the next step? Well, A, you start looking for it. No one's been looking for this evidence. No one. So I'm just bringing this up as a means of explaining how something happened. It's a theory, okay? Secondly, and this is probably more important, evidence of something that old, 120,000 years ago, is rare indeed. I could probably talk for half an hour on what it takes to become a fossil. Fossils don't just happen. I mean, if you think about it, if you were out on a hunting expedition and you died, well, you just fell over, and before you know it, every trace of you is gone. You're eaten. That's basically what happens. Now, we know that Neanderthals and eemians buried their dead, and we have found some evidence of buried dead. But if you think about it, you bury somebody 6 feet under the ground, or whatever their rituals had, and over time, what happens? Well, for one thing, we had an 80,000-year period where glaciers carving out giant canyons, and it's very destructive. And add to that the idea that man-made things don't last very long. We see evidence of the Egyptian pyramids. What are they, 6,000, 7,000 years ago? We see Stonehenge. We see some crumbling. I mean, most of the societies that existed, we see them now by satellite where there's little impressions under the ground. But those are all items that have happened in areas we know to look for, happened over the last 12,000 years. Man-made items don't last very long. And the last piece of information I'm going to leave you with is something I read from one of my favorite authors, Bill Bryson. And one of the things Bill brought up, he said, you know, if you were an archaeologist in the distant future and you were trying to find out some information about our civilization, and think about it, our civilization, New York City, skyscrapers, dams, all of that, it's massive. Seems like it could never go away. In the distant future, all that crumbles to nothing. And it doesn't take that long. And here's a startling fact. If you were that archaeologist looking over a long period of time to try and see remnants of us for this short 12,000 year period, the sedimentary layer, which is what we become, part of the dirt, the sedimentary layer of our entire civilization over the last 12,000 years would be no thicker than a piece of paper. It's kind of sobering. It all seems so real, but it goes away really quickly. Okay. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. There will be more.